What's going on, guys? This is Martyrs Brigade 99 coming to you once again with another session of Dark Souls PvP. Alright guys, we're back at it once again in the forest, but this time we're not in the Dark Root side. We are in the Moonlight Butterfly side. Now, I used to do a lot of videos featuring myself on this side whenever I wanted to have some good matches in PvP. So, we're kind of back at it. So basically, this is just a series of matches that I was able to randomly get. So GG to all the participants in this particular two-part series. Now, the first series will feature myself kind of experimenting. I know most of my builds have all stayed around the 53 poise break. Right? And for a lot of you guys that are sort of new to Dark Souls, 53 is basically the poise break that will allow you to sustain one greatsword hit, two-handed greatsword hit. And one of the main reasons why I did it was because I do a lot of forest hunting, and a lot of times whenever you're fighting two guys, you really don't have time to do a lot of toggling, a lot of that other stuff. At the same time, I wanted to work on my toggles, but I realized that it was a little difficult to really concentrate on toggling if you have a 53 poise break. So what I figured I would do, I would go ahead and drop it. So this particular build, I think it has like 37 poise. Not enough to sustain a two-hand greatsword hit, especially seeing that a lot of people like to use those great swords and stun the crap out of you. It seems like, that's the only thing people could do with great swords nowadays. Those ridiculous, constant running two-handed R1s. Which is all to the good, because the only thing that will require for me to do is get better at my toggling, which is basically the aim anyway. Alright, so part 1 is going to feature myself using a build that has 37 poise. And part 2, I'll actually drop down to 14 poise. Now, a few observations about this no shield PvP. I've been at it with the no shield, I'll say probably about 2 or 3 weeks, and I've come to some conclusions. It's definitely fun when you're playing against people that you know, and it's cool when you have to kind of work outside of your comfort zone. But one thing that I've realized trying to play without a shield is that once people see that you don't have a shield, they really take advantage of that. Right? And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I'm just saying there are a lot of advantages to having shields and disadvantage to playing without a shield. Case in point, when you have a shield, you really have the comfort of being able to block, as opposed to risking the chance of missing, or especially when you're trying to parry or missing a parry. So you really have a lot of security with the shield. When you don't have a shield, either you can block with your weapon, right, or you're basically taking a chance at missing with the parry. So, there's pros and cons to playing without a shield, and obviously pros with playing with a shield. So, after playing this way for, I'll say, probably about 2 weeks, I've really gotten down to the point to where I'm not going to exclusively do one or the other. Since I've gotten a lot of practice with playing without a shield, right, I'm going to try to stick with that. But in some of the more extreme cases, I'm going to make sure I have me a shield handy, which will be one of the main reasons why I will more than likely have a light shield, maybe that leather shield, or perhaps I'll even stick with the buckler, because I think that's only 1.5 units. So I think that's what I'm going to do, because I run into so many situations where I'm trying to rock without a shield, and I run into these ridiculous great sword users that basically, seeing that I don't have the protection of a shield, they just constantly do the the running two-handed R1. And either I can block it or I can toggle out of it. But even if I toggle, a lot of those guys, it's kind of like all they're doing is looking for combinations. And combinations are cool, and with those combinations, basically they're just ending the fight in like 2 or 3 hits. Which, I mean, if you're trying to learn something, you know, if you're trying to get proficient on your tactics, at least for me, is not enjoyable. Because like I said, I go full hollow mode when I'm doing random invasions. I'm not really trying to learn anything during random invasions. Basically, I'm just, when I'm playing random invasions, I'm basically playing using all the tactics that I know. May it be stun lock, may it be 2 or 3 hit combinations, may it be, I mean, BSing whenever I have an opportunity. That's what I do when I do random invasions. But when I'm playing formal matches, and I know I've said this plenty of times, but this is just how I see things, because I've heard some guys say, you know, why do you not play as hard during setup matches? Well, like I said before, the goal is not to hurry up and get humanity or souls. The goal is to get better. So this is why in a lot of cases you will not see me doing these, you know, great sword combos where you basically stun the crap out of somebody and BS them, because I'm not really learning anything. I already know how to do that. There's really nothing hard about doing that. And I'll basically stick with some of the lighter weapons that will cause me to, you know, stick and move rather, be a little more defensive, learning how to maneuver and how to improve with both defensive and offensive strategies. So this is why when a lot of times you guys see me playing during these formal matches like I'm doing now, I'm not using the strongest weapons, nor am I using the strongest armors, nor am I using some of these 2 or 3 shot kill techniques. I reserve those for forest hunting or any other type of random invasions. Alright, so basically this is just me playing without a shield and working on these tactics. Now that was a good toggle BS right there. That was definitely a good tactic. So, like I said before, I'm realizing that in some of these cases, because some people don't think the way I do, which is cool, because we all have our own perspectives, because some people see formal matches, I mean, basically that they should be played the same way as random invasions, I think I really need to have a shield handy. Right now, this is not knocking anyone's view, because I know a lot of you guys that pretty much hate my channel, but for whatever reason you continue to watch every video, you know, just to look for something that you can basically gripe about. I'm not saying that I'm not really saying anything about anyone else's views, but what I'm acknowledging is that, you know, not other people see things the way I do, and I'm fine with that. I'm basically talking about how I need to adjust my own playstyle, knowing that. So, you know, I'm still going to basically try to rock primarily without a shield. But when I'm in some of these situations where people are basically spamming attacks, basically because they know I can't block and do anything else with it, I'm going to ensure that I have a shield handy. And for any of you guys that are suggesting that, I mean, not suggesting that, but basically starting to play without a shield, you know, you're trying to dual wield and, you know, you're kind of new to it. I know you guys have experienced some of the things that I've experienced. So what I would suggest, like I said before, even though you may be trying to work on a different type of tactic, ensure that you have a shield ready, because there's a lot of guys who are not thinking about you learning anything. They're trying to kill you the best way that they can. And there's nothing wrong with that. Alright, so basically enough ranting about that. Case in point, just the last fight that I had. In most cases with that guy spamming that R1 the way that he did, and keep in mind, spamming the term spamming the R1, I know it has a negative connotation, but there's nothing negative about it. I mean, that's just what it is. It sounds bad, but it's not really bad. It's a tactic used by basically all of us, and is a good tactic, right? It just should be used in moderation. And the reason why I say it should be used in moderation is because there's a lot of guys who are looking to take advantage of an R1 spammer, right? So when I say it should be used at the user's discretion, I'm not saying because I consider it a new tactic or anything like that. I'm basically saying it should be used, you know, at the user's discretion, because there's a lot of people who will punish those R1 spamming techniques. Right? But like I was saying, case in point, with not using a shield, it would be very difficult to punish that guy with the Chaos Blade from earlier, because basically I don't have the security of blocking some of those hits, and I'm still trying to learn the parry timing of that offhand weapon. But if I had a shield, he would have been punished plenty of times because I wouldn't have feared any of his attacks. So like I said, case in point, and a lot of those tactics and a lot of those situations, I'm basically going to make sure I have not only an offhand weapon, but also an not an offhand shield, but a shield as well. Alright, so enough of that rant. Alright, so what do we have here? Shout out to good old Enraged Wolf. To the extent that you guys are familiar with the channel, you guys might know that I did a series of matches with him. I don't know, sometime last year. I know it was a rumble in the jungle between him and myself, wherein he was using that Pyro Great Sword of Artorias build. And actually, it was a pretty good series. And it was good to have these series of matches with him. And not only him, but it was good to fight him again after all this time. To see, you know, kind of how my playstyle have changed, and to notice how his own playstyle may have changed. So he is using, obviously, one of his mage builds. Now, the only thing that I had a hard time with regard to fighting this build is that some of those castings, you know, since we have this visual glitch going on, it was kind of difficult to see some of these castings and to notice when some of them shot off, specifically like the soul spears or the homing crystal soul mass. It was kind of difficult. Okay, that was, he almost poised BS me right there, but luckily I got out of there, and I'm actually surprised because PS3 really has an awful lag. Alright, got the BS punish right there for the R2. Alright, and I was able to get out of that. And if you guys notice, you couldn't even see what kind of casting it was. So I don't know if it was Soul Spear. I don't know if it was homing. Well, it obviously wasn't homing crystal soul mass, but I don't know what kind of casting it was. And that was basically because of the visual glitch that we are plagued with on the PS3. So I don't know, from the website and from some of the other information that I've read, supposedly they're kind of trying to do something about it right now, and I hope they do something about it real soon, because I plan to have a series with there's a certain guy, and he is using like a full caster build. But the thing is, you know, for the purposes of the video, it would be kind of difficult to do that, especially when you can't really see the castings, right? So I think it's like Orion 78. So, hey dude, I haven't forgot about the series of matches that we're going to have. The only thing is, I'm waiting until they fix these visual glitches, because if we're going to do a Battle of the Build showcase, I think that all participants, as well as the viewers, would at least want to see a series of matches where there is not a lot of glitchy visuals. Alright, so enough about that. So this guy is basically doing a real good job with his claws. Look like he's using the sunlight blade to help him out a little bit with some of that claw action. And actually looks like he's going to finish me off with that build. Alright, GG right there. Alright, so like I said before, this is going to be a two-part session, and basically I don't really have a fancy name to it. I guess I'll just call it Sparring Sessions. Right, because as I said in the beginning of the video, it's going to be a two-part wherein I am using my less than standard amount of poise, because like I said, in most cases I stay around the 53 poise break mark. Now I don't go to 56, right, because if you guys will notice right there, I was able to toggle out of that. Because when you have less than 53, you really have to stay on your toes with regards to those toggle escapes. And I have definitely gotten a lot better with those toggles, seeing that I'm not staying at the 53 poise mark. Now, me personally, all my builds stayed around 53 or 54. I never stayed at the 56 poise break, which is basically a benchmark that will enable you to sustain those two-handed running R1s from the greatsword that everyone seems to do. As a matter of fact, it seems like that's the only thing they could do with these great swords all of a sudden. And the funny thing about it is, I heard somebody mention not so long ago, they was like, you know, we do a lot of it because it's successful. I think the only reason why I make mention of that is because, you know, a lot of these guys are really good at the game. And when you see that they only do one tactic, and actually I'm having a hard time parrying that attack. If you notice, I was able to toggle out of it, but I'm having a hard time parrying that follow-up R2. But like I was saying, granted, it is effective. But at the end of the day, I mean, it seems as though people start spamming that two-handed running R1 with the greatsword ever since, what, 1.06? Now, before that, people seem to use a lot of tactics with the greatswords, but now, this is all you see. Now, I'm not talking about this particular player, but I'm just saying in general. I know one time I went to the Bird, and, I mean, I would just have match after match with, I mean, literally, all you see is running R1, you know, they'll back off, running R1, back off if they miss, running R1. I mean, they basically try to play a great sword almost like it's a great scythe. I mean, you know how some of those great scythe users used to play. I mean, they would basically just do a whole bunch of running two-handed R1s up until the time that they noticed that people could parry those. So then they used to get a little more imaginative. Right, so it looks like a lot of these greatsword users are getting the plague of the great sight users used to have. I mean, but it's all good because, like I said, there's tactics. I mean, you can roll BS them if you time them correctly, but that's only if they're not dead angling with them. You can toggle out and try to parry, but I mean, who really want to sustain damage? Or you could just block with the shield. So there's things you could do. It just makes certain tactics a little more difficult. Right, if you're trying to practice, especially like if you're in the Bird and Moonlight Butterfly Forest, you know. But it's all to the good because, like I said, I mean, there's counters to a lot of tactics. So I mean, basically, once you see that you're fighting one of those guys, that basically all they do is those running two-handed R1s, it just will cause for you to get a little better on your defensive strategies. All right, if you notice right there, that was pretty glitchy. I mean, I saw him raise his arm, but I didn't really know what he was shooting. I mean, you couldn't even really see it, but it's all good. So hopefully they will get rid of that visual glitch within the next few days. I mean, I know they're working on it because, like I said before, the website was saying something about them working on it. But at the end of the day, I mean, I'm really sick and tired of it because not only is it kind of difficult to see some of those pyros and a lot of those sorceries, but in a lot of cases, it's even difficult to see some of those red signs, right? And if you're a ridiculous ganker, it may be difficult for you to see some of the white signs. All right, so enough about that. All right. Got a nice parry right there. Couldn't get the wake-up hit with the offhand falcon, but I was able to get that one-handed R2 with the longsword, so we're looking good right now. I thought he was going to BS me, but I got a little lucky. Come on, dude. Come on. Oh. You guys notice I was able to toggle out of that. And luckily my high-speed Evelyn came in a little handy. Evelyn, I don't really know how you pronounce it. I've heard different forms of the pronunciation of that word. But you guys know what I'm talking about. Alright, so we're back at it again. So let's see what this guy's got going on. I don't know. I can't really tell from the visuals if that's a broadsword or a long sword. And actually it looks like it's a broadsword. And the reason why I can tell is because if you guys notice, that rolling R1 that he does, with the long sword you will do kind of like a thrust motion. But with the broadsword, the rolling R1 is basically a horizontal swipe or slash. I don't know how you want to consider it, but it's basically a horizontal slash. So that's basically, well, at least that's the way I can tell the difference between the two. Alright, off with a combination, but luckily I was able to take advantage of that opportunity. Alright, what do we have next? Alright, so it looks like we are going to be faced against a Halberd. Halberd versus Halberd. So I really have to be careful because I'm not really sure what the poise break is of the Halberds. I'm not sure if it's 31 or 36. I think I have like 37 poise on this particular build. I can't really remember off the top of my head. Alright, got a good block right there. And you know, blocking is not really that bad when you use a two-handed weapon to block. But like I said before, the thing that I don't really like about blocking with your weapon is that you don't really have a free hand to parry. Whereas when you're using a shield, obviously, you still have a free hand to go ahead and hit that R2 button, because there's a lot of situations where I need to block and at the same time I need to immediately parry after. But it's kind of difficult to do that when you are two-handing a weapon. Now, the only technique I've kind of noticed that is somewhat effective is if as soon as they swing at you, you kind of toggle anyway, whether they try to stun lock you or not. And you know, that technique is cool, but it's not really reliable, mainly because that technique assumes that they're going to follow up with a consecutive hit. In a lot of cases, they don't. And when they don't, you're basically taking damage anyway. Alright, so that's another one of those disadvantages of playing no shield versus the advantage of having a shield. So, like I said before, after playing this way for, I don't know, probably about the last 2 or 3 weeks, I think it's about 2 or 3 weeks I've been playing this way, I've really come to realize that going strictly no shield is really not the best thing to do. Right? You may want to go primarily with no shield, but in some situations you need to have one just in case you're dealing with situations that a weapon only would not benefit you in any way. Alright, so GG to good old Nagus Light. Looks like we have a Gravelord sword going on, and I'm not really sure what the poise break of this thing, because I'm thinking it's 53, because I fought somebody else with a Gravelord sword and he basically just stun locked me after the first hit. And I'm not even talking about the R2, I'm basically talking about just a two-handed R1. So, and that's another thing that will help you a lot with playing without a shield and getting better at your toggle escapes. Knowing what the breaking points are for certain weapons and kind of learning them. Right, case in point. You won't get stun locked with the first hit of the longsword as long as you have like 30 or something poise. But at the end of the day, you need to realize that if you get hit with the first strike, you know, if you don't have a shield, you basically need to toggle out of the second, because you will get stun locked if they hit you with a consecutive hit, with the second hit rather. Or you just need to roll backwards and somehow dodge. And that's one thing I definitely experienced. You know, you might can sustain that first hit with the long sword or the broadsword, but after that, either you need to toggle out or you need to find some way to counter or escape. Because especially that ridiculous broadsword, it can kind of toggle it can stun lock the crap out of you. Alright, so we have a run-up parry method. And you know what? As much as I talk badly about that run-up parry method, I mean, that technique seems to really be effective on a lot of people. And like I said before, I think that's just personal taste. Me personally, I don't like to do it, although it's kind of difficult not to do it when you're playing without a shield. It's kind of difficult. But at the end of the day, you know, I don't know. I just really think that's just kind of personal taste, because you guys will notice, especially in part 2, you'll notice some guys that you can almost know, you know, the exact time when they're going to parry just by looking at their patterns. Right? It's just kind of like they may two-hand a weapon And then once you see them come up with a shield, as soon as they just run up to you, no attacking, no anything, you know they're going to parry. So, you know, in some cases it's good, because a lot of these guys who use that run-up parry technique, it is effective, because I've been parried plenty of times with that technique. But at the end of the day, it's not, I don't know, I kind of have mixed opinions. You know, I can't say it's not reliable, but to a degree I can. And I say that mainly because if you notice, those guys who use a lot of that run-up parry technique, they throw out a lot of parry attempts. But I mean, I guess it's risk versus reward when they finally hit it, right? Because in other words, during one match, they might throw out like 10 parries. But I mean, I guess if you landed on the 11th time, the risks are worth the reward, because I mean, those riposts can inflict a lot of damage. I don't really think I need to talk too much about that. I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys know. So I guess that's just one of those, you know, personal taste things, where either you like to do the run-up parry method or you don't. And it's one of those risk versus reward things where, you know, granted you may take a lot of risk with that run-up parry, but once you finally land one, it's definitely worth the reward. Alright. So I kind of knew he was going to parry right there, because I just basically been paying attention to his patterns. And like I said before, to a lot of you guys who are new to PvP, that's another thing you guys really have to do. Pay close attention to the patterns of your opponent. Because if you pay close attention, especially because a lot of these guys are really predictable. A lot of them. A lot of these guys just basically follow the same pattern with a lot of their tactics. And this is why, alright, got a good parry right there. And this is why I like to mix things up. Right now, I'm not saying that just because, you know, you attempt to mix things up that you'll never be obvious as far as patterns. I'm just saying, alright, got a good BS right there for the punch. And actually, I think he tried to dead angle that. That's why I ended up getting his back. And actually, I got arrogant right there, because when I looked at his vitality, I thought it was low enough for me to be able to kill him with that crystal Ablin. But I guess not. So, I mean, I guess that was a wrong estimation on my part. Alright, so we're back at it again with Mocking Hawk. Alright, let's see what he's got for us this time. Alright. Back at it with the, looks like the broadsword. You guys notice? Run up parry again. As a matter of fact, let's see if we can predict. Now, you guys notice he's not going to be doing anything. Run up parry right there. And see if he gets it. You know, it's kind of going back to the risk versus reward thing. Once again, and actually that wasn't a run up parry. That was a good estimation. Because, I don't think that wasn't a run up. He knew I was going to attack right there. But like I said before, I mean, it's just one of those decisions where you're weighing between risk versus reward. And, I mean, case in point, it was good right there. And actually, he kind of parries me a lot. So, you know, like I said before, it's just one of those things where you're kind of weighing between personal tastes and what works best. Me personally, noticing patterns, especially when I have my shield, works best for me. Because if you guys are familiar with any of my videos, you guys will know that I almost land a riposte almost every time I attempt to parry. And that's because I go for patterns. Whereas other people, they may hit ripostes, but it's only after, I would say, a lot of parry attempts. So at the end of the day, I mean, who really cares, right? And that's why I say it's just a personal thing. Because as long as you get your reward, who really cares about the risk, you know, as long as you don't mind taking those risks. Alright, so that's basically it for part 1. I think there's just one more match in this particular clip. So, hey, stand by for part 2 of the 2-part series that I like to title Sparring Sessions. So, until next time, Martyrs Brigade.